What is up, YouTube? I'm Brian 10K, and today we're going to be talking about wheelchair-bound adventurers. So you're probably thinking, Brian, why are we talking about this? Well, if you were on Twitter, you'd know. This topic has been a fiery topic for going on like a week now. It's insane. All of the hatred that wheelchair-bound adventurers get, and I'm like, whoo. All right, so instead of trying to sit here and just debunk every single bad faith argument I have seen, instead I decided I'm just going to show you guys a few examples on how you can play a badass in a wheelchair or, some other equivalent mobility aid. Because not all of the examples I'm going to give you are going to specifically be a wheelchair. But they will solve the same problems, so, give and take works a little bit. So I think the first one I think we need to go with is Steeds. Because here's the thing. All of these can be valid, just kind of, and I'm giving you a bunch of different options because, your character's race and their class are also going to play big time roles in this, right? So, regardless of like whatever those are, so you're gonna see at least one or two answers here that will fit pretty much any character you're trying to build. So the first one I'm going to give you, like I was trying to mention, is Steeds. So this could be like, for example, you could be having a character that is a druid that rides some type of animal as their guide. There's actually a little bit of like historical relevance there, because I believe there's actually some story about some Viking that couldn't walk, but he was an excellent cavalryman. And I'm like, oh, that's great inspiration for a character who can't walk and still is a badass, right? So you could literally have this character who maybe he can't walk, but they have a horse, or maybe maybe they have a sled, and they have like, some dogs or some wolves, or maybe some lions, or who knows, come on, it's D&D. There's no wrong answer here. They could have almost any animal they wanted. So steeds are a very good primary way to go about this. The next one I want to give you as an example are magical aids. So there's a number of ways to go about this with the magic aids. You could have them have a wheelchair that moves based on thought. There's a lot of homebrew ideas, especially here, and I bet you there's plenty of stuff you can find online to help you give this idea. One person I saw had this really cool idea. I can't remember where I saw this, but the idea was they were like a necromancer and they had spirits moved their legs for them, or they wore like the metal armor plating like the knights wore, but from the waist down, and the spirits would move that. Kind of like War Machine's exoskeleton from the MCU, only they were a necromancer that did. So that's kind of a really cool concept. Like, there's a number of magic ways to go about doing this. Now, I wanted to mention that real quick because I know that there's going to be somebody in the comments, well, they could just magic away their disability. D&D, a big part of D&D is storytelling, and that's why I'm not saying magic to just undo the thing, because that's probably not the character this person is trying. Let's be real, if you're playing a character that is in a wheelchair, you have a reason for it. There is a story you are trying to tell with that character. So magic is probably off the table for that character, and there's a number of really good and valid reasons. We're not going to give the magic can just fix everything argument the time of day, because it can't, and it's a ridiculous argument to begin with. However, having magical mobility aids does solve the problem, so to speak, as well as providing a unique and kind of interesting way to go about it. Because you know what I mean? Like, you could have a wizard who's on your party that's a magic user and they're in a wheelchair, but they can hurl a fireball because you don't need legs to do that. So there's a number of those. So that's a really cool way to go about it, is having a magical mobility aid. The next one I want to go with is you could also go mechanical. Now that's really fun, especially if you're playing an artificer. Mechanical mobility aids also typically, a lot of players, I've been seeing the artwork online, they'll try to find they make robot legs, or, and there's a number of ways to go about that. Of course, when I thought mechanical, I'm not gonna lie, my first thought was like treads like a tank. So like maybe they could get up like rough terrain or stairs, because the treads kind of get around those kinds of problems. So that's kind of like, that's how my brain went with it. I was like, ooh, treads, there's an idea. Also, by the way, before we get any further on the mechanical side of things, honestly, the mechanical one can kind of go for anybody. because all you have to do is just say that an artificer made it for them. Like that's kind of that's it. You know, if that's the background of the character, that's the background of the character. Yeah, a lot of people like to act like there's a right and a wrong way to go about having a wheelchair thing, but there isn't. The only wrong way is violating a player's consent. And the next one I have for you is the old-fashioned battle wheelchair, which I think is still cool. And another concept that I would like to give you guys is maybe your character's legs don't work, and there's a number of reasons why their legs wouldn't work. Maybe they're not there because of a battle, or maybe they were born that way. Maybe they were cursed. Maybe they have a genetic disorder. I mean, there's a number of reasons why a person would even want to play a wheelchair-bound character. So those are things that can be used as examples in there. But here's another really cool concept. I'm gonna throw some artwork of a tiefling that's in there. But I was thinking about this. Like tieflings have tails, right? So it's actually a tiefling is a great idea for a character who can't use their legs but they could use their tail to like spin the wheel or make quick turns. So I don't know. It seems like a really cool concept like that. Maybe they use the muscles in their tail to help make the wheels go. So like, you know what I mean? So like basically their tail could operate the wheels entirely. I mean, it just depends on the wheelchair's design. It's a really cool concept in my opinion. Like the idea of this of a tiefling with a prehensile tail that's moving the wheelchair wheels for them. Or at least at the very least helping them turn in battle, right? So your guy can just make a quick turn over, and so he can continue to fight somebody who's over here. So that's like the four major ones I could come up with is steeds, magic machines, and the old-fashioned wheelchair chair. But while we're on the topic of that, when you're building these characters, a lot of people try to say, well, they're not going to be able to get around all these rough terrains. That's not true. Because they are. It just depends, because no matter how you built this character, let's be real, if you're building a wheelchair-bound character, you probably built them to be a competent character. So, for example, if they're part of the martial classes, they're going to be able to do things that, like, at the very least, what IR athletes can do, So, there's a number of ways to traverse rough terrain that all of these characters, regardless of what their mobile aid is, have a method to get around it because of their class or because of their race. Their tools are all there. All there. Every class has a tool in their arsenal that could be used to and built up with this character who has a wheelchair aid. Like for example, if they're in the martial classes, one thing I thought about was like I saw this athlete who could lift himself up. I'm like, what's stopping a martial class guy from who's in a battle wheelchair from like taking two knives, stabbing the wall of a dungeon, and just quickly clacking up there, right? Magical and mechanicals and beast aids are even more practical. So there's no wrong answer here, right? Because like I said, you got the treads thing for the tank. You've got the animal is using, you're using the animal's legs. Magic, you probably are levitating up there. Or then in the case of the necromancer I mentioned, the spirits are making your legs move like your war machine from the MCU. So just the magic version, but you guys get the idea. The point of me giving you this video and giving you the basic concept of these things, because there's a way to work around it. Work with your DM if you're the player, and if you're the DM, don't be afraid to work with your players on these kinds of characters, because these kinds of disabled characters are full of rich storytelling. And especially if you're a content creator, because if you put that in the content, somebody in your audience is going to see that character and it's going to mean a lot to them. So I think it's a great idea. And like I said, there's tons of really cool fictional characters that in our modern fiction that fit these categories, and people can kind of see themselves in there. And so don't be afraid to do it in your D&D campaign. I forget because I'm a little scatterbrained. If you're a DM and you want to help make these kinds of things work, work with your player, figure out what kind of character they're going to build, what their goals are for playing this type of character, and then if you're worried about the dungeon, I'm going to give you 3 bonus things for the dungeon. Like easily you can toss in ramps. There's a number of reasons why ramps would exist inside your dungeon. You could just make it the entryway is meant for wagons. or maybe they also, like I mentioned the treads thing for the wheelchair. Well, what's stopping you from having a warforged army that like your bad guy has an army of warforges, that's how they travel on treads and wheels instead of legs. So like a tank. So therefore, they need a different alternative route than stairs to travel, per se. So see, there's a number of ways you could go about it. Putting a ramp in there, and you just you can work your bad guys in there if you feel like you need a reason to justify them being there. I don't feel like you need to have that justification. But if you want some other ways, like there's also like elevator style pulley systems where like they have ropes and like chains and things like that, so they can get to different levels of the place that way. Like in an elevator, or the one of the ways I really am actually thinking about putting in my campaign, honestly, just because, not even because I have a guy in a wheelchair, is because like I think it's a really cool concept, and it's the idea of having like a portal system. So basically, what you would do is you have your players solving a puzzle to get to the next room via a portal, because there is no stairs, because there is no way up outside of that. That's the other idea that I came up with. And then it kind of, you had this like really cool puzzle system, and you can make it to where your players have to figure out like, okay, how do we traverse this magical dungeon where we have to solve a puzzle to get to the next room and get to the right like pathways of rooms to get to the bad guy, the big bad. I mean, I think it's kind of a cool concept there. So you're free to use any of these ideas that I've given you. Because at the end of the day, there is no wrong answer. The answer here is to have representation, because it matters, and to have fun. And if playing that type of character is gonna bring some joy to the table, go for it. If it's a way for a player to have a different experience, to understand a different perspective, or maybe to see themselves as a hero that is like them, I say go for it. Like I said, there's no wrong answer here. Outside of punching down at somebody who is wheelchair bound in like a comedic sense, like there's no wrong answer here. So if you want to play these types of characters, go for it. In fact, if any of the methods I gave you stand out, put it in the comments. Let me know which one stood out to you. I'd love to know. Anyway, I'm Brian 10K. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.